More recently, Nick has founded Makoce Agriculture Development, a 501c3 nonprofit, which is the next level of local indigenous agriculture and food systems development on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Nick is passionate and dedicated towards creating viable change for his community through a self-determined, indigenous-led, reconnective local food system designed to regenerate healthy, equitable communities, economies, and our environment for many generations to come. Please give me a warm round of applause for Nick Hernandez.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Taylor. I just said my name is Nick Hernandez. Wakia mani imachapi. Chante washte nape chuzapilo. Paki sinte imataha. Mila Yata Pika Alwa T. My name is Liz Hernandez. I'm from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and I reside within the homelands of the Knife Chief community. I'm Oglala Lakota, and in the introduction, he told. And today I'm here to talk to, well, welcome, I should say, after a number of years of this conference being pushed back. Happy to be here with you guys and see Frank. Gave Frank a hug when I first came in. But I came here to talk about Makoce. And Makoce, Makoce in the Lakota language means homelands. So it's called Homeland Agriculture Development. And my work stems from my connection not only to the homelands, but also my connection to my grandparents. When I graduated in 2006, came back home after getting my undergrad, my origin, the origin of the organization started from there, because my grandmother was a gardener, and she grew up in a time where connection to food was real high, and coming back from school, there's that whole disconnect of not only within systems, but also within this connection to our food. And so when I came home, the origin of a lot of my work stemmed from the garden that my grandmother was in, and she was in there harvesting all these cherries. I mean, all these fruits and vegetables and stuff. And I was standing there holding them, because at the end of our harvest, we make a meal, we make a salad and sit down and talk and everything. And I came back, I graduated, came back energized, ready to make change within my community, and I was holding all these fruits and vegetables, and I stopped. It just hit me. I'm like, I came back. I had my sociology degree and humanities degree and all this stuff, and I was holding these fruits and vegetables, and I said, I want to do this. I want to do what you're doing. It's picking these foods and having the passion and creating these stories, and I said, I want to do this. And she jumped up, she stood up and stuff, and she said, turn around, grandson. So I turned around, and she said, look out there to the land. And I turned around, I'm holding all these fruits and vegetables and stuff and looking out. And she said, you have to go and do that. You have to go and do what you want to do, like you've done before. But now that you're home, you have to go and do that. The things that you want to do, you have to create. And you have all this land, you have access to this land and communities and resources, and you have to create those things. And that was in 2006. In 2006, I turned my first garden and started growing my food. And so that passion and that connection stemmed from my relationship with my grandmother in a garden. And to date, it's been growing ever since. And that's kind of the origin of how, like, my passion for growing and being in the garden and doing the things that I love to do and creating those things I love to do within my community stemmed from. And so our focus is to utilize our lands, our people, and our traditional thoughts and systems to bring ourselves up and become, again, the once thriving Oglala Lakota Ayate. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to revitalize the systems that are now coming full circle. You know, the terminology is talking about it as like regenerative ag, you know, biomimicry. You have all these terms, but it all comes back. What it all basically comes down to is, what is your connection to the land? We can call it whatever we want, but what is your actual connection to the land? So our connection to the land is where we're from, our identities, our cultures, our heritages, and whatnot. And so I'm from the Oglala, I'm Oglala Lakota, and the word broken down in the Lakota language means scatter their own or first attack. And I come from, the reservation in the state known as South Dakota, on the sovereign lands of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And we have roughly 2.7 million acres. We have 9 districts, a population size of about 25,000 people living, working, and residing on the reservation lands. You know, but the one thing that we all are trying to do is to reconnect ourselves. Reconnect to something. And when I talk about those things, I talk about our disconnection not only to our land. It's basically what it is, our disconnection to our land. This is what my land looks like today from disconnection. This is an allotment map. On reservations, we have 3 categories of land use, I should say. We have tribal land, tribal allotted land, and then scattered fee land. And so these are different colored depictions of what those are, the pinks, the yellows, and the reds. This is the entire reservation. This is 2.7 million acres, 3,500 square miles, for reference. And so coming down to like those demographics and moving forward into everything that I'm trying to create as an organization. I was the founding initiative director at Thunder Valley CDC, probably some of you guys know, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I started the Food Sovereignty Initiative there in 2015, and really started to dive into and learn about food systems development then. Then we termed it the food sovereignty. What is the end goal of all this thing is to be more self-sufficient within our communities, and we're finding it today that should be the goal. To be more self-sufficient. We're coming out of a pandemic. Well, it destroyed an entire food system that was not only regional, national, but it was also worldly connected. And so for me, I really started to deep dive into what does that look like within my community, due to the research I've done for a number of years. I did surveys. We did surveys asking community members, how far do you travel for your food? Well, the numbers came back 80-mile round trip for nutritiously dense foods. That's what in most rural communities, that's like the minimum now. But having access to nutritiously dense, some of the food that we get within our reservations, is high processed foods. Our grocery stores are mainly convenience stores these days, as opposed to going into co-ops and whatever else where you can locally source foods. And so the focus then was not only to get the demographics and get the up-to-date research, but start to think about solutions for development. My reservation has 3 grocery stores, spread across 3,500 square miles, 9 convenience stores. So I have more convenience stores than we do have grocery stores, with a population size of between 25 and 27,000. And so within those statistics, I begin to find out that 95 to 99% of the food is actually shipped onto our reservation. 95 to 99%. So nothing is actually being created. We live in a cattle economy in this state, right? We can drive for miles and miles and you see cows, cow. This is what is called a red meat state. But the fact is that you can see all these cows. They're probably, I don't know what it is, 5-to-1 probably ratio of cows to a community member here. But for there, it's the same on the reservation. We have a million acres in rangeland. which means we have 1 million acres for just dedicated to cattle. We have 300 acres dedicated to crop production. And I've done all this research and stuff and know these. And then we have a land that's dedicated for like residential and residential use. And so I really started to do the research and figure out like what is the demographics of our community? How many people live here? What is the food that is actually being created if we're driving by all these cattle, all these cornfields, all these sunflowers, and where do they go? They get harvested up, they get shipped out. Same with the cattle. And those things, you really start to see that they don't come back. We have a broken system where we raise all this food and it gets shipped out. And it's probably the same within the state. But I'm really focused within the community because my focus is on local food systems. And so a local food system is anything within a 100-mile radius. I wanted to figure out, and I think Rapid City still falls within that 100-mile radius. So a lot of the demographics and the data that I'll be developing in the new organization that I built will stem around that 100-mile radius. And so Makoce started in 2019. So I parted ways with Thunder Valley CDC and wanted to create, like he identified, the next level of what that system of thought and system of development is. Because I spent 4 years learning about food sovereignty, creating curriculum and educating community members, and talking to like the kitchens, the school kitchens and the cafeterias and community members and doing my travels. I've traveled to food systems conferences and stuff and seen other facilities and be like, oh, we need those within our reservation. Because we have a majority of schools. We have schools, we have convenience stores, we have gas stations, those things, but no place to where we can actually develop and process food. And so I came back with I came back with these ideas of development, and when I left the last organization to start Makoce, and Makoce is that next level of development, my focus was on environment, was on identity, was on that connection, and land is one of those things that helps that connects us to that. You guys all have your farm stories, your food stories and stuff. And so I developed a logo to represent that, but not only within the land of everything that is above it, but also everything that is below it. As you turn that around, we have the same ecosystems and environments as below. And so that's what the logo represents. It's a very, very powerful logo in the relationships between not all ecosystems, but also within the prairie dogs and the buffalo, to the Lakota people. Those are our trailblazers. Those are the stories that you talk about, because those are the buffalo and the prairie dog were the ones who regenerated the soil. They were the companions who actually took care of the soil, but also they were the life way of the Lakota people throughout not only the Great Plains, but also into the upper Great Plains of Canada and southern Great Plains of Mexico. So our mission, is to develop indigenous agriculture and food systems designed to regenerate equitable, healthy communities, economies, and our environment. So always being conscious of people, planet, and place. I like to use this, this cartoon, and on what it says, I think I see healthy, affordable food on the horizon, and that's just a mirage. And we see a lot of those mirages because they're always being thrown at us in media and TV and billboard signs, but on reservations it's the same thing. But in underserved, unhealthy communities, that is a lot of what is identified as our food system. And I used to spit that out a lot of times, because under the USDA, if you don't have access to like a grocery store, you're deemed what is called a food desert, right? And so I know the statistics, high diabetes, high suicide rates, all this kind of stuff, and it all stems back to your access to food is what it basically comes down to. If you have access to all of these unhealthy foods, your body becomes unhealthy. but I really plagued because people like the negative side of statistics that sort of really drives and pulls people in. But I wanted to move on changing the narrative and basically developing our own narrative and not calling it for what it is in terms of government's identity, but in being able to switch it around for what exists. We live in a food oasis. And what that means is that we're surrounded by food and we just don't know it. We need to learn how to communicate or learn how to connect back to that and utilize that. And like I said, you're talking about new terms of like regenerative agriculture, ecosystem building. But the thing is that there's grasses outside, there's trees, there's leaves that have more nutrients, more nourishment than what comes, on the back of a truck 2,000 miles away. And so what I've been able to do is to create that narrative and share that narrative not only within my community but across the nation. And what I begin to figure out is that when we talk about food systems, not in an ecosystem term of connecting, to our natural ecosystems also, but in a sense of what we have to create in order to make those, resourceful, sustainable, but also to be able to take an energy and turning it into new forms of energy, and that's what these elements are. We're creating food, we're distribution, aggregating, we're processing and marketing, and so we're taking these food elements, and that's what I want to do at home, is to be able to create these elements from a small system that is viable and useful within our communities, no matter in what food we want to access, but creating systems so that we can take that food and everything that is attached to that and turn it into a new energy. Composting, the coffee itself is a nutrient builder for plants, more decomposing and composting. But what we're working on today is those systems as Makoce. I was a one-person show up until January of this year, and we're a growing organization. Like I said, the organization started in 2015, but a lot of the work that I've been able to do is create surveys and regional reports, policy reports, cropland studies, market feasibility studies, and then develop curriculums, because it's about educating your community about people, planet, and place, right? And so being able to do this as I start to understand my community and become knowledgeable and be able to share that information in reports and share that. And so Makoce this year in 2022, I had this broad range of thinking. Oh, we want to develop a food system. I want to do all these kind of things. And this year in January, as I started to grow out the team and the organization, sat down and we did some strategic planning. What is that food system look like for us? And the focuses of the food system now is on production farm. Farms are far and few, right? We have a lot of large base land, monoculture agriculture, monocropping, mono livestock raising. But I wanted to create a production farm on the reservation where there isn't a production, or there isn't an actual farm, a farm per se with diversity, where it's just not a cornfield or a sunflower field or those cattle ranging on a couple thousand acres. I want to create a production farm, and so these are all initiatives. So production farm, the Food Systems Institute. So the production farm this year, we'll come up to that. The Food Systems Institute is another initiative. And so stemming from doing a lot of research, talking with youth, developing curriculum and surveys, it stemmed that we still need the educational piece of community education, so that we can take that data and make infographics and make the accessible presentations and hands-on opportunities. But the Food Institute is the community education and the entrepreneurship or workforce development. Farming is farming and ranching is generational, right? If you're in the family, you're basically going to take up that opportunity, right? And so what we want to create is that opportunity by creating exposure, by creating access to place and space, and building a farm to where we can create new markets, new job opportunities is the place we want to create. I did create a small production farm of a half acre. I built a chicken coop that housed 500 chickens. 500 chickens gets you 100,000 eggs a year, right? But also inside that chicken coop, I built a processor. So I built a collection hall to collect all these eggs, and then in the other hall, I built this processor, had the washing machine, the storage, all this kind of stuff, and then created the flow chart on how everything gets processed, gets packaged, gets distributed, and then gets shipped out in transportation around the community. And so, but also in that farm was designed as an educational farm. It was a production educational farm. Produced 100,000 eggs. So before I left, my plan was to turn those eggs into a added value market, marketable product. It never got that far after I left. But it's things like that. We want to create these places and spaces so that it's just not something you talk about. It's something that you can actually be a part of and visit. So the third initiative is a Makoce Food Hub. I think we only have a handful of, well, probably actually one, I think, right? Sioux Falls has a food hub. I don't know if you guys there's any other food hubs around the state, maybe smaller community accessible facilities. And so I wanted to build a food hub because through all this research and travel, I got to see what is called South Valley ECD, Economic Development Corporation in Albuquerque, and visit their food hub. And it was just a community building like this, but it had a certified commercial kitchen where 60 entrepreneurs or local vendors could rent a space or a locker and keep all their processing material in there. But they had access to ovens and dehydrators and stoves and processing equipment to make food products. But also they had conference space. Conference space on my reservation is far and few. And so within the food hub, I want to create this multi-purpose facility so then events like this can happen on the res. And we can drive 2 miles down the road and we can see that farm, or we can have that lunch from the local chicken and eggs or the local farms that are being utilized and be able to aggregate and gather and educate and train. And so these are the things that are in the works. So, and then the hemp development. Hemp, as of 2018, has been a legal, highly regulated crop still. But I have a passion for hemp. It's been legal since 1998 on our reservation to grow hemp. Not saying we're far in understanding the system or in utilizing the product, but I see it as beneficial for its diversity and use. Oil, protein, heating and insulation of houses, everything that's going on within the country. And the last one is with the Oceti-Sakowin Food Systems Alliance. The Oceti-Sakowin is the nation, is the entire nation of the Upper Great Plains. And so I call it the Oceti-Sakowin is to that political relevance and relationship to my relatives, the Dakota, Lakota, and the Dakota. And then also calling it alliance because that's what it is. We were an alliance. We were a nation, an alliance of people. And I want to utilize this as a platform for being able to share information, but also obtain information related to policies, procedures, advocacy around food systems development. So these are the 5 strategies. To date, we're a nonprofit organization. In 2019, on the reservation, I took out a business lease on tribal allotted land. As of January, I finally got that business lease. It took me 2.5 years to get a tribal business lease on my own family land. When we look at these lands in that first picture you saw with all the pinks and reds of the land, that's fractionation of land. And so you have to go through many processes in order to access the land and utilize the land. So as of May, I was able to access one of the largest business leases on the reservation to date of only 24 acres. 24 acres took me 2.5 years. 2.5 years to access. So if you're talking about investments, within communities, in anywhere, if it takes you 2.5 years to get some, what happens to the investment, right? What happens to the opportunity? Like, it already sailed, right? And so having access to that lease is one of the most, climactic, most milestone processes ever to date on the reservation. And I have support of my local tribal government, the previous president today, and then also we've been able to access farmland. We access 40 acres. On the reservation, we have 5-year leases. You can't really do anything too much in 5 years, but we're designing a system that we can create in 5 years, replicate, and be able to do that across the, not only within the reservation but within other communities. But we access farmland that we're putting into development and into production in the coming years. We're raising funds to develop the farm and the food hub. We just hired a master planner to help us look at development design, land design, getting community comments on what do we want to see on 24 acres. We don't have business districts like this entire district is here. We will be creating one of the first identified business districts on the reservation today. Been able to hire consultant teams, and my staff as of 2021, there's a total of 7 of us. I just hired an intern last week that's focused on agronomy. And so all this comes back to, the theory of change. The theory of change for our community or any community is how do you want to design this, and how should that flow within your community and its use? Because with the food system, you can come in with any part. You can start in any part of that sector: processing, packaging, distribution, transportation, consumption, and so we started to build a theory of change. But our theory of change is within those systems that I talked about, within those 5 strategies and initiatives, and they break down to other microsystems that we engage with. This is a picture of the 40 acres, and we started to design that out. These are actually chicken paddocks. One of the systems that we are engaged with and that we're going to design and develop, that we've been engaged with, is poultry production. Poultry production. This is a red meat state. Poultry is identified, I think, as turkeys, but also if you were to process chickens here, you have to be federally regulated to process chickens. And so what we're doing is we're taking that step, because what we have access to is a mobile poultry processor. Mobile poultry. I have a 54-foot semi-tractor trailer fixed to be able to take a chicken, kill it, scold it, take the feathers off, harvest the innards, and package it and store it in a 54-foot, I don't even know what that was, 300 square feet or something like that. 54 by 18, I don't know, 470 something square feet basically. But it has the capacity to harvest 135,000 birds in a season. Our seasons here are roughly between 120 to 160 days if you're raising outdoor livestock. And so we want to be able to create those paddocks for free-ranging meat bird production. And also within that design is to put in that mobile poultry processor, and then affix it, meaning develop it with gray water systems, grain beds so we can feed the chickens, filtration systems, and then composting facilities for all the manure that gets created inside the coop. So thinking in systematic form by the utilizing and the regenerative processes of what the chickens can create, but also the lean protein that can be sourced. We have the only mobile poultry processor in a 5-state region: North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming. 5-state region, because we're a red meat state. I think the only poultry operation that we have of large scale is, I think, Dakota layers, right? And that's more for eggs. So that's the design for the 40 acres. This is the business district. This is Highway BIA 27, which is the north and south access into our reservation. And my community, my town is central to the entire reservation. So this is where we'll be creating that business district. This is where the 24 acres will be on both sides of the roads for the business development. The programs that we operate today is that we have the regenerative poultry farmer program. Okay, we have the Joel Salatin style tractors, if some of you guys know, 10 by 12, 2 foot high, move it around every 10 feet, need it accessible of 5,000 square feet. For 50 days, you can produce over 200 to 250 pounds of food within 50 days. So we have this as a training program for families, for youth who want to be those next entrepreneurs or producers into servicing that mobile poultry processor, right? So we have a system. Now we're starting to build those systems because we have access to the bottleneck systems to be able to create added value foods now. And so we worked with 8 families. They had access. We have a class that we start in January that they can participate in. They learn how to raise humanely chickens, manage, feed, and do this on a grant opportunity. And at the end of the day, at the end of the season, we supply them with the knowledge, with the training, with the skills, with the equipment to be able to do this again on their own next season. Just based on this small tractor concept and 5,000 square feet. So we have the regenerative poultry farmer program, and that can be towards entrepreneurship or just community education and food sovereignty, food sustainability. Like I said, that's between 225 to 250 pounds of poultry in there. Roughly, I think your commercial side is like 3.5 pounds per chicken, right? Out as a whole bird. And then on this other side, we do with Arlo and Lisa Ironclad are my cultural foods educators. What they do is they're real interested in traditional and cultural foods. One of the things that they engage with is that they harvest buffalo, or what is known as bison to be scientifically correct. But to us, the tsutunka is what they harvest. And for us in cultural foods, that is one of the most cultural food you can get on our reservation or within the North American, South American plains. Is one of the keystone species that help build nations and was the life source of a lot of my relatives and other nations. And so what they do is they go out and they partner with other programs, ITDC, USDA, AMS program, but also down to our school programs, and they teach them about the ecosystem building of buffalo, but also the medicinal and the food resource of buffalo. To date, they've been doing that for 6 years. 6 years. They've been hands-on engaged, harvesting buffalo and sharing those opportunity and experiences for many reservations. We just came back from Red Lake for harvesting 2 of their buffalo, which is if you guys ever harvest anything, imagine harvesting, a 1,500 pound, 2,000 pound buffalo, and we can break it down. We can break it down, package it within 8 hours. It's like, I think it's like 800 or 900 pounds of food, that you can create, you can share within your communities, but also the teachings. My sons right here are 6 and 8 years old. They've been harvesting buffalo since they were 3 years old. They were probably one of the most slickest kids with a knife, but they can take the finest of a knife blade and take off a hide of a buffalo. But these are the next generations of ecosystem builders, but also the next, soil scientists, and the next to take on what I'm building today for tomorrow. I'm thinking about that next generation. Much time I got left. This is a picture of my homeland's homestead. We had a gathering of local organizations, what I call the convergence. We had a gathering to be able to bring together, my community stakeholders, my producers, my local organizations, and talk about what does the food system mean to them, and what is that food system, and how are we going to go move forward creating that food system, along with the policies that need to be created, the food codes that need to be created. And we held this in August. And so these are like buffalo producers, garden producers, tribal advocates and council reps, and then partners of the organization. And so we're creating impact by the hands-on opportunities that we create with our younger generations and within the national spotlight. This is the bald white guy is the Food Safety and Inspection Administrator for the USDA. He wanted to know the processes of field harvesting a buffalo. And so he brought his entire team from Iowa, from DC, from Colorado, and we did it. We broke every part of it down, along with Troy Heinrich, who was also there in partnership, to talk about the importance of what field harvesting is, and how that process doesn't need to be a regulatory process. It is not today still. But we have government leadership that comes and visits us and wants to understand these processes. So we're talking about impact. This is what I'm talking about, being able to create added value products. It's kind of the end goal. We want to be able to feed ourselves and our communities. We raise poultry as one of our things. That's the processing trailer. These are the families who raised some of the chickens, harvesting their own animals that they raised. And it is about connection. That's one of the strongest things. It's about, what is your connection to food? Well, you raise it, you process it, you package it, you store it, and you create the foods, and you share that within your communities or at your tables. And so we've been able to do that with these systems that we have access to, and then also making them making those labels and making those standards for the local markets. This is a chicken breast that we were able to package because we bought a vacuum sealer. Having access to those small packaging systems to be able to package. I think it's like, I didn't mark that on there, about 2 pounds of poultry meat within there. And still the 54-foot processing trailer. Other impacts we're creating is we're sharing a lot of our stories. We've created a podcast. We create marketable things that we can share the stories, share our adventures, and we put it out there, nationally, internationally. We create, data streams, and we share those, and creating partnerships with, philanthropic, with communities, with donors and stuff. I think this is our last podcast, episode 5, and it was about our trip from visiting a farm in Minnesota, one of our partnership farms. And then also creating impact. We had a strategic planning meeting as an organization, and we had little drawing sessions, and our kids basically drew what they want their community to look like, what they want their food systems to look like. And it involved buffalo, it involved chickens, it involved more trees and plants and pollinators and everything. And this is the team. Like I said, as of January 1st, I was a team of 1. Today we're a team of 7, and these are all local, local community members within that 100-mile radius who are passionate, who are focused around making change, sharing ideas, and developing systems. And this was from the convergence that we had at my home. And it is about creating partnerships. We're partnered, within a regional partnership with Regenerative Agriculture Alliance, Indian Collective, Tonka Fund. We're supportive of everything that we do within those. Native American Natural Foods. We're talking about Tonka Bar, Homegrown Pork and Poultry, which guys, some of you guys know AJ Alee. He's on the team. He's my farm director. So he's actually developing the 40 acres of farmland that we have access to, and he's my teacher for that regenerative poultry farmers program. Red Cloud Indian School. We work with them because we're developing we have developed a production farm on their campus to date. To date, they have 40 egg-laying chickens there, and they have high tunnel systems, and we're creating those foods so that that food can access that chicken and understanding those processes. First Nations Development Institute is a partner. They're helping us to build a 24 by 24, what I call a cultural foods garage. So this is a space that we can utilize for dehydrating, for doing hands-on processing of meats, for storage, dehydrating, and understanding the tools and the techniques you need for harvesting. If you're harvesting from tomatoes and canning cucumbers to taking a buffalo leg and understanding the cuts of the roast and on the different style of meats. And I'm doing that on another piece of property. So it's basically a 24 by 24 food safe garage, panels all inside, access to water, commercial kitchen, all kinds of stuff in there. But that is our first structural building that we're creating. And what's next? What's next is that we have access to this land, so we want to develop it. We've been able to get on that 40 acres this year, but due to climate change in 100-degree weather of July, right? It burned out our crop that we planted in June also. So we're looking at ways of being able to get in early and put in crops, but also put in a diversity of crops. So this year we did that, but we want to get a head start on that, so then that our cover barrier is protected as we move in. And then we're bringing in other partnerships around development of the 24 acres and looking to break ground on a food hub within the next 5 years. Within the next 5 years, developing and fundraising and everything. But the goal is to create access and opportunity through a connective, regenerative, local, and regional food system. First and foremost, I want to feed my community. Second is everything that we are able to create in partnerships and development to supply to a regional food system, so that things like that chicken, locally sourced, locally packaged, locally harvested, comes into another local market to serve its purpose of providing, nutritiously dense foods is what we need more than the small cooperative markets that we have, but being able to expand out those opportunities. So that's our goal. And that is Makoce Agriculture Development in a nutshell. Thank you. Any questions? Good question. Yeah.
So you have your own incubators and you grow your own chicks?
Nope, those are all processes that we want to create on the farm. Is just to that. We access chicks from I think like a brooder out of Minnesota. We've been working with this young teenager who started his business, and it's booming. It's booming now because of egg access and poultry access and people wanting to connect to their food. So, but that's the idea in building the farm and in building the space and the facilities is to eventually, develop our own nurseries and hatcheries and stuff. So that's in the design.
Are you working towards your own power generation so that you can be fully separate from health?
Yeah, in partnership with like, I think they're called Ace Solar Fire, Minota the Dukes, Henry Red Clouds. We're looking at developing those systems so then that we can utilize our natural systems for being able to power. But when we talk about infrastructure, those are the small steps that we have to get into in development also. And those are the steps I'm starting now.
Good. And then main food security means that you can be completely independent if you have to be.
Exactly. I built, I designed and structured my own house so that eventually the solar panels will be the heating source. I have probably, the way it built the design to become familiar in home building design was for the fact that I eventually want to be off the grid with a lot of the structures. And that's how I design moving forward also.
I'm curious, you said that you're working with like a systems planner, and you hired like a contractor, like a planner.
Yep. name escapes me right now. But yeah, we're bringing in a master planner for right now having community conversations on what the 24-acre looks like within the community. My focus is on building the community, the multi-purpose community food hub first as this first initial building, and then with the rest of the community, designing out what other spaces do we want to create within the community also.
And where did you look to find a planner?
We actually, at my last organization I worked at, we worked with her and her team before.
Okay.
So we're not bringing anybody in new. We're bringing people who are knowledgeable about the community, about the processes and procedures, and so that's what I'm
And
with.
from around here? Or
They are not.
they're
They
still
are not.
talent from
Yep.
outside?
They are not.
And the reason why I ask is because we're thinking about doing that with the South Dakota Local Foods Coalition.
Mhm.
And we're looking for a planner to come in and talk about more of the state-based concept of a local food system
Yeah.
for that same purpose. So
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious about the talent that's out there that would know about South Dakota.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, probably this company would be very familiar. I mean, there probably is other companies, but when we talk about grant writing, food systems development, all this, everything is very small into understanding those people who can lead those efforts, and we also have to develop those people too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Good. Wow. I thank you guys for coming and listening to Makoce Ag.